first art of the Pahlavani is what you see now, and it's the art of the shields. We call them sang. And as you know, how it relates to a combat or ancient battle situation, when they will draw up their lines of armies, they would assume shield formations first. And that is what the sang or the shield represents. It represents, obviously the shields of a warrior, but then it also represents the first stage of battle. That's another example of the sang or the shield that you can see there. Okay, then we'll come to the second art of Pahlavani, or the second stage of battle, which is usually when the two armies clash and collide with each other. And this art is represented in our ritual there. In that black and white photo, you can see the guys doing push-ups, and that's the art of the Shena. This is when in the zurkhaneh everyone kind of like gets together, and they start now doing the group exercise, everyone together. As you see, it's all done to the rhythm and the beat of the drum, the war drum, and then we start doing push-ups. This symbolically represents the stage of battle when you're pushing, you're being pushed, and you fall down on the floor, you got to get up. And what you don't see these guys doing is the different variations that we do. And when we do this type of movements, they're doing the very, very fundamentals, which is just doing normal push-ups, but it also includes a lot of stretching and mobility exercises in this art. But this kind of proceeds and is all done as a warm-up to the third stage of battle, or the third art of Alimony, which is the art of the meal, or the clubs that you can see different photos of. And the clubs, as you see in the video before, and that kind of like really stands out how we move them. Again, it symbolically represents the stage of battle when you're drawing the swords, and you have the clubs and maces or whatever different handheld weapons, and you're fighting it out, right? So it kind of prepares you not just from a strength and stamina point of view, but also hand-eye coordination and balance. And as again we discussed already, and we're coming to talk about the importance of rhythm and that dance aspect of it in a way. So this brings us to the fourth stage of the battle. Usually after the battle, either you win or you lose. So you're running or you're being chased, and if you go further down, you can possibly find examples of what we do. And you saw that in the video before, how they do whirling around, they spin around themselves, and they do different foot exercises, that they do. So I'm just like, and this is, that you can see that it's not only, it's not only being the rhythm that I talked about, but it's also, being light on your feet, having good balance,
The
being
guy, he
able
looks
to.
like the guy looks like he's a ballerina. He's just twisting and jumping and very light.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that's very, very important concept. Like in physical training, it's like your feet have to have bounce. Like you can't like just be stationary anyway. So it's very much like a cardiovascular type of conditioning. That is the fourth stage of the battle. As I mentioned, it symbolically represents when you're chasing or you're being chased. So it's very important. Anyway, we come to the fifth stage of the battle, which I think again, like these guys perform, and that's that bow. In actual fact, it represents the bow, and it's a metal bow that has a chain, and we use that for overhead range of motion. We swing the metal bow or the steel bow overhead, and that conditions us for overhead range of motion. And I guess this whirling that you can see now in the video, there's the bow, or cabode as we refer to it. It conditions us for overhead range of motion, which is very important when you're laying siege to a castle or like an enemy fortress or something. And you've seen this in movies many times, when they're on top and they're throwing things over your head, and then
Right.
you gotta like have overhead range of motion. So symbolically, that's what that kabode or the bow represents.
Yeah.
And these are five arts that we talked about, which are in Iran. All these five arts that we already saw examples of and spoke about are is the warm up for wrestling, which
Mm.
is now the sixth art. That's the sixth art of Pahlavani,
Uh,
is wrestling. So Pahlavani wrestling is very old. It's combat wrestling. They did it from horseback,
uh,
and they do it from ground. And it's the precursor to catch wrestling, where there is like all moves are allowed, and you can grab the feet, and you can do submissions and locks and
right. Right.
chokes and holds and so on and so forth,
Mm.
but they really clean that art up, and it's a now also a Olympic art, which is called freestyle wrestling. So
Mm.
that's the kind of like the background to it. So from Pahlavani wrestling, and that was the really the Persian way of wrestling, which is
Mm.
very freestyle, and you can grab the legs, and that's, I suppose, a big differentiator between freestyle wrestling and Greco-Roman wrestling. You can
Mm.
hear from the name where that comes from,
Mm.
and where they cannot are not allowed to grab below the waist. So
Right.
that's like
Right.
a little bit of a difference between the two. So as I said, these six arts now, it's all very physical, and it's all very body based. So the
Mm.
seventh art and the last art of Pahlavani is the art of the drum and the bell, the art of the beating the war drum and
Mm.
ringing the bell, which makes you what we refer to as a morshed, or the guide, who will be able to reside over a ceremony and conduct and hold ritual worship, like you have seen examples of. And that's that gentleman that sits on the pulpit
Mm.
and beats the drum and rings the bell, while often reciting, from the Quran, reciting
Mm.
from ancient books, and
Pause. The murshid is the one who's beating the drum. Just continue from there again.
yes. Yeah, sure. And that's the seventh art, as I mentioned, the drum and the bell. The morshed is the gentleman that you see sitting on the pulpit, and he beats the drum while the practitioners are exercising. And that is really the last art of Pahlavani, is to be able to not only master your own instrument, your own body, but also to master a external instrument like a drum, and to master music, and to master
Mm.
being able to recite the poetry that often is used in the zurkhaneh. They recite from the Quran, they
Right.
recite mystical texts from ancient Persian poets, and
Right.
literature that has evolved around the zurkhaneh culture over the last 100 years, whatever,
Mm.
hundreds of years or so. So I hope that gives you an insight into what these practices, how they're done. They're done
Mm.
systematically in the order that I explained, and
Mm.
what symbolically they represent, and the physical benefits that they have.
That was it's amazing. I mean, very very interesting, and I appreciate the way that you broke it down to us in parts, in the seven parts. A couple of questions from that. So the drummer, the murshid, um, according to that name, I mean, does that mean he is the most qualified and he has kind of mastered a lot of the other skills that come before, and that's the highest level?
In a way, yes, and that's exactly what I said. That you have to master all the previous six arts, and master also the seventh art before you can guide others, before you can, lead the ceremony, and it's really a congregation. It's like a group of
Mm.
people. It's a temple. The zurkhaneh is a temple, and they attend there to worship, and they're using their bodies to worship. It's a physical worship, you know. It's a worship of strength, and it's a worship of masculinity, and fatwa and the Pahlavani, as we call it, you know. And that's like the real idea and purpose behind it, you know.
Yeah, this video we're looking at now is just is mind blowing, because you know, to the ignorant person like myself, we think, oh, he's just moving a couple of large clubs around, but these are 62 kilograms each, or together they're 62?
No, it's together. We always measure them in pairs, because like obviously you're carrying the combined weight
Right,
of the two,
right.
so it's 31 kilos each,
31.
but that's nevertheless very, very impressive. I would say there is very few people in the world
Yeah.
that can do this, what you're seeing
Yeah.
right now.
No, it's amazing.
Not because of the not just because of the strength, but it's actually a very simple but not easy skill to learn. You know, it's a simple but it's not an easy skill. I've been teaching this now for many, many years, and I'm constantly like surprised, you know, about by how people are surprised. You know, I'm surprised by their surprise, because
Yeah.
you know, they're always so surprised that it's so much more difficult than they thought, and they come
Yeah.
and they pick it up, and they're like they look uncoordinated, they feel uncoordinated, and they're like, okay, this was harder than I thought.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm always surprised by that, because you know, of course it's going to be very difficult
Yeah.
at first. Everything is, you know,
Sure.
it's
I mean,
because
it
you have
requires a number of things going on at once. You have to multitask, because you're doing this swinging rotational motion, which is, it's kind of behind the back, then in front, behind the back and in front, and it's kind of like a figure eight, you know, in a way, and you've got to do it with both arms, and you've got to do it in sync at the same time. And I guess like with anything, technique is key. If you don't do this properly, you could easily injure yourself, right? Injure your shoulder or something like that if you don't do this correct.
well, especially with that weight, of course you can. But I just have to point out that this is not beginner level. Like
Sure,
a
of course.
beginner would be a
Yeah.
tenth of that weight. A beginner starts with a 6 kilogram pair of clubs, so 3 kilograms each. So this is like 10 times what a beginner would use. Just so that is clear.
Yeah, yeah.
But you know how it's done. It's, as I said, very systematic, and you can't, like as a beginner, you can't start with the heavier clubs, because obviously you're going to injure yourself, but also it's like you're not ready for it, so you can't do it. You know, you just can't. You won't be able to pick it up. And in fact, you go to a video that I made recently, you will see that, you know, I was in a group where I was introducing this, and none of them could even like do it once, you know. But that's not to say that, you know, I'm special and I'm stronger. It's just because I practiced this longer, and
Of
I know
course.
the skill and I have the understanding of how to do it. But that's what I'm saying. This is something that needs to build over time. So essentially, you know, it's not just about strength, but it's equally about skill.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, like with anything. So we talked about the importance of music. Now you incorporate yoga into your Pahlavani training. Was that always part of it, or is that something you've introduced?
No, I have not added anything to it. The only thing I've added is just the business name that I created, and I called it Persian Yoga, just so that it can be
No worries, it just cut
if
out.
you
So again, just to ask that question, the importance and the role of yoga. You said you haven't added anything; it's just the name. But tell us about the role of yoga in the
yeah.
zurkhaneh, and also, and please correct me if I'm wrong. You know, as many people may or may not know, you know, yoga is from the Indian civilization and this kind of context. Is that the same case with Pahlavani? Is it originally kind of from that part of the world and that civilization, or not?
No, no. I have to explain this, okay? So,
Please.
keeping in mind what I said about the practice, I have not added or subtracted anything about it.
Mm,
And keeping in mind what I said about my business name, I chose that as a marketing term, calling it Persian yoga. We have to talk and decipher this word about yoga. Yoga is a Sanskrit word. It's a word that originates from the Sanskrit word yuj, which means union, to unify, to bring together, to yoke. You know, that's what that word means. That's what that term means. Now, you have Hatha yoga, which is, as far as I know, the earliest form of yoga that around 250 BC was, formalized by Patanjali in India, and that's its history. Then, then I was like, and I have studied that, and I'm practicing Pahlavani now,
mm,
and I'm practicing it and saying to myself, this is also yoga. This is also intended to bring unification of the mind, body, and spirit,
sure.
and make you as a whole a stronger person, to make you stronger.
Right.
That's what this practice is. And it's the Persian expression. This is as far as I know, comes from that culture, comes from that way of thinking, that comes from that way of life. And it's the that's why I chose to call it Persian yoga, because it's the Persian expression of that manifestation of unification of mind, body, and spirit within an individual. I hope
Mm,
that makes sense to
mm,
you, and
mm,
I hope it gives you an understanding of how it is yoga, because it is very yoga. It is
mm.
very yoga in the sense that it includes mobility, it includes flexibility, it includes meditation, it includes breathing exercises, and it's very, very oriented towards developing strength. Strength required by warriors in the battlefield arena, the arena where it's your conditioning, your physical and spiritual and your mental conditioning decide if you live and die.
Sure, sure. Yeah, no, no, that makes a lot of sense, and that clears that up. We're looking at a video here of, it's kind of like a modified press up. Just talk me through what's going on here and what are the benefits, and at what stage does this come in your 7 steps of Pehlavani?
Yes, sure. So this is part of the art of Shena. This is actually the third fundamental of the practice with the Shena.
Mm,
The Shena, or the wooden board that you see the gentlemen doing push-ups on, it has specific reasons why we use it. It symbolizes the sword. It's
mm,
like when we do our push-ups, as you see, they touch the chest on it all the time,
right.
and it's meant to give you a stable, symmetrical platform that is raised above floor, that enables you a greater range of motion and leverage while you're doing bodyweight exercises, such as this, what we refer to as twist push-ups. So they're doing twist push-ups in this scene that you see here, and as I said, it's the third fundamental exercise of the Shena,
Mm.
and it's done in that sequence that I've already explained. So this would be the second stage of that ceremony.
Okay. I want to talk about the bow, the metal bow that they use. Um, I
The kabbado,
understand
yeah.
how that exercise helps upward mobility and shoulder movement, etc. Why would they not use an actual bow? Because Persians were also well known for archery and shooting. Did they ever think to actually use an actual bow just for practice for pulling, or did that ever come around or not?
Okay. I have to explain that yes, you're right about the link of archery and Persians. In fact, I've read that in the very early history, the Persians only taught their children four things, and that was to shoot a bow,
Mm,
to ride the horse, to
mm,
wrestle, and to tell the truth. This is
uh,
their whole entire education at
mm,
in ancient times. But to answer your questions, I have to say that, as I mentioned in the beginning, this is a physical martial arts, physical strength conditioning system. So it's not martial arts where you train muscles
So you said
Okay,
it's yeah. Just go back about 20 seconds. Yeah.
okay, I'll try my best. But I think the last thing I was saying in regards to the kapode is how it's used is that it's the it's used in a Persian yoga or Pahlavani is a martial arts strength conditioning system. Okay, so if we understand that, it's the exercises are done to strengthen you so that you can apply yourself to the skill specific practices that you do. It may be archery or other weapons that you apply, or specific combat. Like I have other we put that into modern context. There's I had a lots of Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys that do this. There's a lots of wrestling guys already, that do this. I have archers that do this. I have fencers and other. My point is that often with martial arts practice, it can be kung fu or whatever.
Diversified. Yeah.
You have to apply yourself to the technique, yeah.
Right.
But you cannot neglect the strength conditioning. Sometimes some martial arts, like specifically if we talk about archery, it makes you stronger, but it's unilateral. Like it's
Right.
very one-sided. It's
One
very
dimensional.
rare that you shoot from both sides, and it's very rare that exactly, that's my point. So it becomes very linear, and that's not being the strongest that you can be. The strongest that you can be is circular, it's spherical, it's not linear. you know you have to be 360 degrees strong, and there are no more degrees than that. So this why I said to you, this is a martial arts strength conditioning system to develop the strength required for martial arts. Now you can go and be as specialized as you want,
I
because now you
see.
have general strength for everything.
So, for example, if I, one of a traditional skill, I guess, is, for example, throwing a spear or javelin. So, this type of exercise is strengthening, my shoulders and coordination, so that I'm able to throw a spear, for example, right? I could do that.
Or anything else, because
Yeah.
as I said, like in a live battle situation that this is preparing you for, anything goes. And
Right.
like your life depends on how ready you are. You can't just be a good archer, you can't just be a good javelin thrower, you can't just be strong, you can't just be fast. You have to be everything. You have to be a honed sharp weapon.
And I think nowadays many of us are good at one thing, maybe two things, but we it's very rare to find someone who is good at a lot of different disciplines. For example, someone might be good, like you say, just at archery, but what happens if their bow breaks and they have to have hand-to-hand combat with someone? They have to now know how to wrestle, how to engage that person. What if they're able to then pick up a sword? What if they're able to pick up a stick or a spear or a lance or anything like that? They need to be multifaceted, and I think nowadays, like we said, we're too one-dimensional, and the traditional warrior, however he looked, was able to pick up basically any weapon, and he could use that to his advantage.
Yeah, I mean, there are many examples such as that, and it's all very fascinating to see what the human body and human potential and human capability, if you apply yourself. But here's the very interesting thing, that doesn't matter how much talent you have. If you do not have a system, a practice, and an approach, you will not reach that optimum potential and peak performance that you would otherwise be able to reach.
Right.
So my message here is that this is a very ancient, time-tested, battlefield-proven system that works and has produced results because I mean, doesn't matter about the socioeconomics and politics of today or history. It doesn't matter at all. But what matters is that you know what's there. This comes from an ancient culture that at not just once but several times in history was, if not the one of the largest empires with the greatest armies and
Mm,
whatever that existed
mm,
on the history
mm,
of the earth, you know. And
for
that
sure.
and this system originating from that time exists till this day. The
Mm,
empires are gone, the
mm.
cultures have changed, but this has stood the test of time and is with us to this day. That's very, very special.
For sure. I think that's one thing that I admire about that particular culture is that they have maintained a tradition of how the zurkhaneh was. Even if you were to walk into a zurkhaneh 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 500 years ago, it should be the same as it would be today. And this is very important in maintaining and preserving culture and knowledge. I like the video we're seeing now. The difference between the linear movement of a dumbbell, whereas you have the rotational 360-degree movement of the meal. Yeah.
Exactly right, exactly right. And this is a kind of like a sophisticated. It's very sophisticated because it's so simple, you know. That's what makes it so
Mm,
sophisticated. For example, you know, I work, as I said, like with a lot of archers, with a lot of athletes in general, and one of the common conditions, you know, that I see as a chiropractor is you know, shoulder issues and shoulder pain,
mm,
from some different, like whatever it may be, strain or sprain or whatever it is, you know.
mm,
But you know, after the initial treatment, you want to start the patient on a rehabilitation protocol. And this is something that's very interesting, you know, that when I do a comparison, you know, with linear training using TheraBands, using dumbbells or whatever, you know, to really conditions the shoulder holistically and completely, you need at least 3 4 different exercises,
right.
you know.
Right.
Whereas with the meal, it's just one exercise that encompasses and integrates all those ranges of, I mean, it's a full range of motion of the shoulders in
Mm,
circumductions with resistance. That's unique.
yeah.
You know, so that's sometimes for a Westerner, that's like a little bit difficult for them to get their head around because they're used to the complexity. And I have to say that in the fitness industry, they thrive on really complicating the situation so that you feel overwhelmed and confused, that you need expert advice and help. I mean, that's how they sell business and services, right?
Mm,
So they're often very surprised and confused about how simple it really is. You know what I'm
mm,
saying?
mm, absolutely. Definitely. If someone wanted to, get into this and uh, buy one of these meals, I mean, it's not something you can just buy in a sports shop or something like that. Do you have to get it from specific people who make them, or where do you recommend someone to buy them from?
Yeah, okay. Thanks for that question, because yes, it's obviously equipment intensive art. Like, you need the equipment and they're very unique, so it's not something that you can just get. I have made some resources available on my website,
Mm,
persianyoga.com, where you can go and learn how to make this stuff yourself. I mean, there's always people that like to do those type of projects. I have also made them available for sale through my website, and I'm the only international supplier, the provider that sells authentic and original equipment made the way it has been made for
mm,
hundreds of years, and it's traditional, handmade by the artisans that originated this culture.
mm,
It's the real deal. And my people that make this is fourth generation family business, and we're supporting a community, and we're supporting the original arts by doing that and keeping it authentic. You know, it's
mm,
not just something that today I see, like there's people in the UK, there's people in
mm,
different parts of the world, and all of a sudden they are producing Persian meal. And I read something very interesting. One person commented is they say, how can you make like a Persian meal in the UK? You know what I'm saying? It's like you making Persian carpets in the UK. It doesn't even
Right.
make sense, like, you
Yeah.
know. But
Yeah.
anyway, this type of people that they copy and they trying to like
Mm,
replicate it in that way, they're
mm,
thinking it's not straight, you know, because they're being
mm,
disingenuous by calling it something it's not. Anyway,
mm,
but that's
mm,
I guess my point of view. But what I'm trying to say is that I am really trying to preserve an authentic and original culture and way of life, you know,
mm,
which
mm,
thankfully and very, very happy about that it's currently thriving and it's growing, you know, and
mm,
hopefully we won't lose it to you know, commercial and capitalist interest
mm,
where everything is copy and paste
mm,
and everything is made in China and everything is
mm,
like used as a commodity, and it loses its artistic, it loses its spiritual, it loses
mm,
its intrinsic value as something sacred, and it
mm.
just becomes another thing that you throw in the garage. You know what I'm
Right,
saying?
right. Yeah, no, I mean it's definitely not something that you want to buy and then, you know, let the dust settle on it. I mean they look like works of art as well, and it's very important. Very similar
It's a
to,
functional work of art, you know.
yeah,
This for us, the meal represents what the samurai swords represents to the Japanese culture.
right,
But the
right.
thing is, you cannot pick up a samurai sword. I mean, and swing it around in the living room, and it's fun for 5 minutes. But
Mm,
this one is like it's like something that's with you for generations. You pass on to your children, and it makes you strong, and it makes your children strong. You
right,
know,
absolutely. Yeah, I was
it's a
gonna,
functional piece of art. Mine is in the living room.
yeah, absolutely. I was just gonna say, in the archery context, it's just like someone wants to buy a cheap bow from China. Okay, you can buy it, but it's going to break very quickly, and you're not going to get the full, I guess, you know, craftsmanship quality from it. Whereas if you spend a bit more, it's worth to buy a good bow that's going to last you a long time and maybe even outlast you and become, like it says here, like an heirloom, which is very important, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, it's that feeling. Yeah. I mean, you have to have respect for yourself, and you have to have respect for the things that you touch. Like it's the feeling you pick up. Like, I mean, you know this. You pick up like a nice handmade bow, and you have like a cheap bow in, you know, that you have. It's a complete different feeling. You know.
Mm, for sure, for sure. So, for example, a beginner pair of meals, you know, 6 kilogram, 8 kilogram. We can order this from your site. You can ship worldwide.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do that. And yeah, and if and anyone who's interested signs up on my newsletter at this stage until the end of January. I'm running a very generous campaign to celebrate the solstice that we just passed and the new stage that we entered. Yeah, if anyone's interested, they can also reach me to ask questions. But yes, persianyoga.com, I ship worldwide, and there is all the equipment, and also I've made resources available for those who want to learn this on their own. There's manuals and instructional videos, and of course I also am available to do coaching, whether it be online or in person. My passion and my purpose is to share this art and its benefits with as many people as I can, and that's what I want to do.
Yeah, sure. I'll definitely put the website link in the description of the YouTube video when we post that. Dr. Kashi, tell us about a typical day in your life in terms of training. How much training are you able to get in on an average day, and how much can you do on a good day? And what type of training does that involve?
Okay, thanks for asking that questions, because again, there's you know, I get that question quite a lot by my students, and I think it's very something very important to talk about. You know,
Mm,
this I'll talk about my own training first. I practice every other day, so every second day. Very sometimes when I'm practicing very, I feel like doing that and I feel stronger. I maybe do one extra session, so 2 days in a row. But then I definitely take the third day off. My point is rest is very important. And secondly, I only practice Pahlavani. I don't do anything else, and it meets my needs. And one of the things that I absolutely love about this is that it's so effective and it's so efficient. So in a very, it's very very, it's you're performing like a dance. As I mentioned, you're dancing, you're going through these stages, you're performing this ceremony for yourself, and it doesn't take longer than 40 minutes to like less than an hour. And that's wonderful because in this stage of my life, I'm very busy, and I'm sure you can relate as a family man, as a businessman. Time. I mean, I don't have time to go to the gym anymore, and
Right.
it,
Well, the gyms are
getting
closed
there
now.
and getting back is the time I can't invest. That too, yeah, yeah, of course, that too, for sure. Some people need that environment. I don't need it. I have self-discipline. I do my own thing. I love doing that. So for me, is every second day, 30 minutes to 1 hour maximum, and I go through this systematic sequence that I already mentioned to you, and I practice within the Pahlavani system. I trust the system. It works for me. And on the side, like maybe I'll do some boxing, or I've started also on archery lately more seriously. So then I can dedicate myself to doing that fun stuff. But Pahlavani just keeps me strong and fit and ready for most things. And I get up, I wake up, I do it, and then I get on with my day. I find that's the best recipe that works for me.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, no, I think I'm, as well as the archery, I've been doing jujitsu for maybe I don't know how many years now, 6 or 7 years. So that's definitely also a big part of my life. I mean, if archery was to disappear from my life, I would be sad, but I would still have the jujitsu, which I really get a lot out of in terms of the movement, the flexibility, the strength, the conditioning. And I can see the Pahlavani training and the zurkhaneh training definitely links in with that. And you mentioned that you have some jiu-jitsu practitioners who come to you for learning and for training. For myself, I think I really want to incorporate some of these warm-ups, these exercises, these drills in my jiu-jitsu, and just like you say, just general overall fitness and conditioning. I think it's there's so much to these traditional disciplines and skills that we cannot afford to ignore the teachers of the past. It's very important that they've kind of sacrificed their whole life to these arts, and we think we can just pick up a dumbbell or a barbell and do a couple of chest presses or something like that, and that gets us fit. That's not the way it was traditionally.
Yeah, look, you said some very interesting things there, and yeah, I agree with you by and large. One of the major things in regards to a misunderstanding when it comes to strength training and physical conditioning, it's very much going away, but it's still there in the mm, in the general public, possibly I could say, is that they equate strength training and conditioning with bodybuilding. That's what they're equating it, and it's in my point of view, it's completely misleading and wrong in a way, because bodybuilding is bodybuilding.
Right.
Strength building is a different approach, and it's for different purpose as well. So this what I'm is a strength conditioning system. It's not bodybuilding, you know.
Right, right. Yeah, because I mean, we
As
can
I
see
said,
from your body type, you're not bulking up, you're not putting on a lot of mass, and in a way, that's not always a good thing because it can slow you down, right? If you have too much mass, but you have a very lean physique, but you're flexible and it's a functional physique.
I think the key word is functional. Yes, I agree with you. And I always say to people, you need to be as big as you need to be. You know,
Mm,
you don't need to be bigger than that. You know what I'm saying? As you said, it will be more of a hindrance than it's good. But anyway, it's not to say that being big is bad or being
mm,
small and fast is better or worse. You know, there are different body types. But my point is there is different ways of conditioning those body types. But interestingly, if you go through the full range of motion and capabilities of your bodies, focusing on the major joints such as the hip and the shoulder and the knees, and you work strength around that from the core out, that's it's very simple. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that, you know.
mm,
And
mm,
this art does it, and it's been doing that very well for thousands of years. And you mentioned the link to martial arts. I mentioned the link to martial arts. I have to
mm,
also say that since 2012, when the Pahlavan Khodem, Rasul Khodem, he's a former world champion, Olympic medalist
mm,
in freestyle wrestling, and he became the wrestling coach of the Iranian national team. And if you browse through my thing, you will see the Iranian national team in the zurkhaneh, the wrestling team, both the freestyle and the Greco-Roman guys doing this practice. And this is their physical conditioning art, right?
mm,
And the rest
mm,
of the time they're practicing like sport specific wrestling skills, you know.
mm,
So
mm,
since 2012, Iran has won every single world championship in wrestling. I think, unless except for the last one, I think, but 6 7 years in a row they won it. And in 2012